We're talking with Stuart Schillinger, who's the Administrative Services Director and Deputy City Manager in the city of Brisbane, California. And Stuart, we're really focusing in on what are managers doing in local government to deal with the fiscal crisis, the crisis in the state budget, the crisis in our economy. How are local governments creatively responding to that, and what are you doing in Brisbane?
I think the very first thing is what you told about my title. I'm the Administrative Services Director and Deputy City Manager. So we are very much trying to flatten the organization, reduce the number of management positions that we have in the city. So we are going through a process where we had about 7 department heads, and when we're all said and done, we'll be down to about 3. So we're going to try and reduce the silos between the departments and have more people reporting to fewer people and allowing people more of that ability to do the job and get it done. That's one of the things that we are doing.
Great. What are the impacts on that for the public? Is that impacting service? Is there a cost to the community of these constraints that are coming on? Or is this actually some healthy pruning, if you will, and restructuring that's happening?
I think there's always costs for the public when you reduce staff. Because if we were to say that there were no costs, then the question would be, why haven't we done it earlier? And the reason why we haven't done it earlier is because the work that is not going to get done is important to the community. We're not going to be able to meet one-on-one with the community in the same way that we used to. Having more additional night meetings for your managers creates additional efforts that have to be pushed down further down into the organization. So you have more ability for people to be trained, but you also have less of the talent coming in to solve the problems immediately.
And how is the public responding to that? And how is your staff responding to that?
You know, right now we're doing a very good job in managing those issues. I think a lot of the department heads who are left have become much more of leaders and dealing with the bigger picture items. When there's an issue at a lower level staff person who hasn't dealt with the situation before, then they go to the department head for help, as opposed to the department head solving the problem immediately by themselves. So it takes a little bit longer to get the job done, but it provides more depth in the organization and more depth for government in the future. And that's what we're really looking for, is what are the future benefits for the government, and not just our organization, but all organizations.
And it sounds like in the process you're creating some opportunities for up-and-comers as well, because they're getting some things, some opportunities to do things that perhaps someone senior to them would have taken care of before.
Right. One of the things that we did is our assistant to the city manager recently retired, and instead of hiring another assistant city manager or putting a person as a split position into that job, we offered an opportunity for what we call assignment pay. So we have 3 people in our organization that are getting a little bit more money and taking on the duties of the assistant city manager I did before. So we have one of our engineers is doing more interactions with the public through assistant to the city manager type of work. We also have our city clerk who's doing more redevelopment work that she had never done before, and our HR person is doing much more of a general organizational types of issues. So we're growing the next generation through this kind of a method.
Now, you mentioned earlier that there were some important shifts that had to take place in the role of leadership to bring about these changes. What would you pull out as a couple key things that you saw as necessary shifts in leadership style, or the substance of leadership to enable these changes to happen?
I think the big one is that whereas everybody back in the 80s and 90s were trained into very particular issues like engineers or finance people or planners, they now have to look at it and say, okay, how do I interact with those other departments? And how does what I do impact another department, and can I take on that role? And can I take on the leadership role? So whereas with our Public Works department, as opposed to having Public Works and Parks and Rec be very separate kinds of issues, is how do we maintain it through a combined force? One of the things that we're looking at doing when our Parks and Rec director retires, we are going to have the Public Works Department take over all the maintenance issues and all the facilities of our Parks and Recreation programs, whereas as a Deputy City Manager, I'm going to take on more of the soft issues, the programs, and dealing with the commission and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's very much trying to recognize that we need to broaden our perspective, that we can't just look at it from what we learned in school, but we need to look at it what's best for the community.
So you're making changes not only now, but you're also planning changes on into the future to help really deal with even more perhaps strenuous fiscal times ahead of us.
Right. One of the things that we've done is as most cities do, we did our 5-year projections, and we have yet to see the revenue line and expenditure line meet. So we know that going forward in the future, we still need to save additional money. So we're still anticipating not filling positions as they come open.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your profile and leadership. And it sounds like it's a very challenging time, but you're stepping up to it, and your team is, and taking the actions that are needed to deliver the services, but in new and different ways.
Yes, we are. Thanks.